Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the John DeVito Show. It's Thursday, December 16th, and we are heading towards Christmas. We're almost there, and as usual, I think Santa Claus is going to be bringing me coal in my stocking. And I want to check in. Can everybody hear my voice? I had some technical difficulties in my last show. So for the people coming in, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, and I would greatly appreciate that. So let me know if you can hear me. Anyway, hopefully everyone's having a great day. And we're looking forward today to having an interview with John Gale from the hottest new podcast here on Podbean, the John Gale program. And the vegans, I wish I had time to talk to you today. I am not a vegan, but I love vegan food. I really do. I had it out in Oakland, California, maybe 2 years ago for the first time. And we have a few vegan restaurants near my house where I live now. And I absolutely love vegan food. So anyway, maybe you and I can talk sometime. So welcome to the show, John Gale. Call in when you're ready, and we will start our interview in a few minutes. But anyway, hopefully everyone is having a great day. I don't know about all of you, but I'm kind of excited about Christmas. I'm definitely a Christmas guy. And the one thing I'm not interested in and I'm not excited about is all the new protocols they're trying to push on us again this year at Christmas with mask mandates, and they're talking about vaccine mandates and all that good stuff. So I'm not sure exactly what's happening with all of that. But I can tell you one thing. I'm going to do my Christmas like I've normally done it. I'm going to go to see my family. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go about. And I am going to, live my life, because I get that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I get that a lot of people are afraid. But the bottom line is we have to live our lives. We can't spend the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years hiding in our rooms, terrified. Because, who knows? I could end up getting cancer 5 years from now. I could get hit by a bus 3 years from now and end up dying. And I don't want to spend my time living in my house, hiding in the corner, terrified with a mask on. And that's just the way I'm choosing to live my life. So I see that we've got John. And John, we're going to get this going in a few minutes. We'll wait a little bit and kind of get this interview going shortly. But let me ask you really quickly, John, what are you doing for Christmas? Are you celebrating with family, or are you traveling? What are you doing for the holiday?
We are. We're spending it with family. We usually get together with my extended family. We all live close by here in southwestern Ohio, probably within maybe an hour and a half of one another. So we all usually get together around the holidays.
Okay, one sec. It looks like I have one bit of technical difficulty I need to work through. Let me get this really quickly, and this should make your audio sound a little bit better. All right, there we go. So anyway, okay, I can just fix that up. I had a cord that came loose on my board here. See what a professional I am, the John DeVito Show. I need my own producer. That's what happens when you're 53 years old and you try to integrate technology into your life. Because I'm not a boomer, but I'm a borderline boomer, so I'm a Gen Xer. But I just barely got in under the wire in Gen X. So for me,
I got to beat John. I'm 55, so I'm a couple.
Oh, you are? Nice. It's good to talk to a man that's senior like me. So 55. When did you turn 55?
July, double nickels, July 11th, 7/11.
Nice. Well, happy birthday. I'm actually 54 on January 2nd. And I guess, I got to ask you this question. How do you feel about being in your mid-50s? I have kind of mixed feelings about it. How do you feel about it?
It really came up quick. I was not expecting to look in the mirror and seeing this, my dad kind of looking back at me. And, you grow up and you just think you're going to stay around 20, 25, maybe 30-ish for the rest of your life. And it just doesn't happen that way.
No, it's crazy. I've talked to my kids. I have 4 teenagers. I got married at 33, so I kind of took my time, and I've now got a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And I've talked to them, and they're starting to talk about, man, high school went by kind of quick. I'm like, what happens? You go to high school, those 4 years fly by. If you go to college, or even if you go out to work, those next 4 years fly by. Next thing you know, you're looking at 30, and that comes up pretty quickly. And then, I don't know about you, but I think my 30s went by even quicker. And then my 40s absolutely flew by. And now I'm getting to the point where, like, man, I'm going to be staring down 60 pretty soon. And this is getting scary. It's crazy how it happens.
It really is. They say when you got little kids, don't blink. And, everybody says that. And you're like, yeah, this is taking forever. I'm losing sleep at night with this baby crying. And sure enough, they're graduating from high school and on to college. It just happens so fast.
I don't know. How many kids do you have?
We have 2 kids. I have a son who's 20 and a daughter who is graduating from high school this May. She's 17. So We started kind of late too.
It does. It goes by fast. I mean, my oldest is 19, and then my daughter is 16. She's my second, and then we have two younger boys. But she's a junior in high school right now, so she's got one more year before we move through, the college years with her. And you're right. It is crazy. So for the young ones out there, I know we got some youngsters out there. Like I saw Mike from Tampa Bay in here. Enjoy your
Right.
youth while you have it. But I've got to say though, from my perspective, being where I am now, I think I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm somewhat content, I'm somewhat happy. I've maybe made peace with some of the paths not taken and am actually pretty happy with the life that I have right now. I hope you feel the same way about your life, but I do feel that I'm finally, for the first time, actually fairly content in my life.
Yeah, really good point. I think the older you get, the more you become, you start to slow down a little bit for one thing. One thing I notice about being in my mid 50s now is that it takes a little longer to do. I still do the things that I always have enjoyed doing, but it does take a little bit longer. And that's okay. Take the time and enjoy life, because if you're so busy all the time, it even flies by quicker. So enjoy it while you can.
Absolutely. And it's funny. I look at the name of your show now. For those of you coming in, we have John Galen, and I've been able to listen to his podcast a little bit. He's got a hot new podcast, and he's very original, like I am. I have the John DeVito show. He has the John DeVito program. So at least he used program, and I kind of wish I had used experience, like Joe Rogan at the end of my show. So yeah, so it is what it is. But let me ask you now. You're about my age. What made you decide to start a podcast? Why did you do it?
Well, I have a radio broadcasting background. Was working in radio for probably 20, 30 years, and along with ministry, I was a pastor of a local church too. At the same time, kind of a varied background, and grew up in a conservative, large Catholic family in the 70s, and I was born with a severe bleeding disorder, which really brought a lot of adversity in my life, and it kept me home a lot. I became very introverted, John. I was missed probably over 100 days of school each year, and so I would stay home. And this was before, online learning and all of this. So I'd stay home, and just to keep myself company, listen to the radio a lot. And it really, I became very interested in a talk radio station in my town, probably at about 8 years old. And I used to pretend, to be a DJ with some walkie talkies, one in the bathroom and one in my bedroom. And I would play my sisters some old 45s on my record player while they were getting ready for school, and pretend I was a DJ. And it just grew and grew and grew. Went on to work at my high school radio station. This is back when you had to get an FCC license to be a
Right.
DJ. So I studied for that and got my license at probably about 16 years old. And then out of high school, went and started working in radio. And I have a real passion for my beliefs. And I think that our country is in some perilous times right now. And so I believe that I wanted to share my thoughts with other people, because I found that a lot of people have the same type of thinking that I do.
It's funny to hear your journey because my journey is fairly similar. I was a broadcasting major in college,
Oh, wow.
and I did it for a little bit, for a very brief amount of time, but I had kind of an untenable situation with my family where I was not going to be able to live there indefinitely. And broadcasting initially does not pay very well at all, or back in the day
Okay.
it didn't anyway. So I did it for a little bit and then got out of it temporarily. And then, that temporarily turned into a 30-year career doing something else. So you know how that temporarily thing works. But for me, it was kind of funny. I told the story the other day. I was watching the TV show Roswell with my daughter, my teenage daughter, and we're watching the show, and I see this guy at the cafe on his computer with his headphones on and a microphone. And I knew you could podcast, you could record things, but I didn't know you could podcast live. I had no idea. So I'm watching this kid do this, and I said to my daughter, I'm like, "What's he doing?" And she's like, "Oh, he's podcasting." I'm like, "You can do that like remotely like that and actually broadcast to a live audience?" She's like, "Yeah, you didn't know that?" I'm like, "No." So I think probably the next day I was on Podbean, And this was during the
Wow.
pandemic because I was looking for something to do. I was bored. My company kind of shut down and we were working remotely. So I was, thrust in my office all day long. And I started doing the podcast. And it's funny, I went back and listened to my first show. And when I did it, it was really funny because I had no idea people would come in the room and make comments. So I think I did it with my son, and we were talking about sports. And I remember looking, and I was like, "Hey, Ethan, I think someone just came into the room, and we're like talking to each other. We're trying to figure out what was going on." And it was really funny. But I mean, it's come a long way. And I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I've had my ups, I've had my downs, and I have periods of time where I lose motivation. But I do love that you're getting on and speaking about some of the things that are passionate to you because my show has morphed a lot of different times. I started off, I wanted to be Howard Stern in the beginning, and I did that in the very beginning, and then realized it probably wasn't the best idea, being that I was a little league coach in my town for 14 years, and some of the little boys I used to coach were sending me links of my Howard Stern style shows, and I'm like, all right, I can't do that, being that I'm a dad now in this town, and didn't really think of people listening to me in my local town. But I eventually got to the point where I started doing some more shows about politics and things like that. And I agree 100% with you. I think that we are in a time like I have never seen in my life. And you can speak on this too. I mean, you're 55 years old. Do you remember a time in your life where we have seen our country in the state it's in right now?
Man, no, I have never seen it get to this state. You always hear people and they argue the idea that, well, we've always had rough times in America. We've always gone through them, gotten out of them. And it's true. I mean, there have been some terrible periods in history for the U.S., but I think never in history have we seen such a decline in morality and people being so easily offended to the point where you can't call someone he, him, she, her anymore without offending someone. You can't open a door for a woman to be kind without offending. You can't
Right.
say anything, tweet anything, post anything without there being this immediate knee-jerk reaction of hatred and anger. I remember a time, John, and we're very similar in age, that you could have civil discourse with someone. You could have a debate with someone who thought totally different of you, and it could be cordial, it could be friendly, you could laugh about it and go out to eat afterwards or have a cup of coffee and still be friends. Today we cancel each other, we unfollow, we defriend, and we don't want anything to do with them, and we'll even say hateful things about them behind their backs.
That's true. I'm actually looking up something as we talk. I have a very good group of friends that I grew up with, great people. And we were having a little discussion last night that turned into a mask debate. Didn't mean for it to happen, but it just kind of happened. And I remember, I'm not going to scroll and read too much of this, but one of the guys that I'm a good friends with, and we're fine, we're good. We've been friends for a very long time since our childhood. But he came out with the argument where if you don't wear a mask today, you're selfish. And for me, I wrote back to him, and I wrote, I think, a really good response. I mean, I actually will read my response to you. And I thought this was really good. I said, sorry to my friend. This went into a long rant about guns and all that stuff. So this was my response to them. And I meant it really in a very, respectful way. But I said, sorry, so-and-so, but I completely support the Second Amendment. I am a gun owner. My question is, because he brought up things about, school shootings, when will our government and experts figure out why students are walking into schools and shooting classmates? We have done next to nothing to address mental illness. If we take away all of the guns in society, the mentally ill will use cars, they'll use pressure cookers, they'll use jet planes to kill people. They will find a way. Why are people killing? Is it violence in video games, excessive violence in TV and movies? Is it bullying? Is it mental illness that's untreated? Taking away the guns will not stop violence, and I do firmly believe in the Constitution. We may need to defend ourselves in the event we are taken over by a tyrannical government. It could happen. I said, I haven't gotten sick in a couple of years. My friend was saying he hadn't gotten sick because he uses masks and hand sanitizer. I said, I don't use hand sanitizer. I don't wear a mask 99% of the time. My wife said that recently, she's a doctor, 70% of the people that she's diagnosed in the last week with COVID were vaccinated, and most were wearing masks regularly. I said, I'm choosing not to live in fear, but I try to respect those who have different opinions than I do. I wish that would be prevalent in all areas of society. I have no ill will against anyone who feels more comfortable wearing a mask. It's their personal choice, but I should be also allowed that same freedom. And that was my response back, you know? So,
Great response. Great
you know,
response. And unfortunately, the science is only their science. That you bring up the fact that the virus is microns in size that passes right through a mask, or you show them, a video of someone breathing outside in the cold with one of their paper masks on. And you see their water vapor shooting out from behind their ears and above and below the masks, and they think it's faked, or they don't believe it, or they tout some Dr. Fauci, and they don't listen to the other science that is just as reputable. And here we are seeing that the vaccines are not effective with transmitting the disease, and people are now getting sick after having the vaccines, wearing the masks anyway. So to me, there is really very little difference. Now, will a mask maybe help with some spittle if someone's coughing or hawking a loogie on you? Yeah, but how often does that really happen? So, and I'm really against masking children when the prevalence of illness and in children is just minuscule. And you bring these things up, and people are just willing to jump in line to jab their kids, a 5-year-old. And you've got cities like New York and San Francisco that are demanding that children prove that they've had their vaccines before they can go to Chuck E. Cheese.
right.
It's insanity.
Well, I'll put this out there. I don't think you've been in my show too much, and the same for me. I mean, I took a hiatus for a few months, but for me, the one thing I've been very honest with everybody about is I'm married to a doctor, and we in my family all chose to get vaccinated. So I am vaccinated with both shots and the booster. My wife as well. My oldest 2 kids, but my feeling is that was my personal choice. I felt like that was the best course of action for myself and for my wife. And for my children, we did speak to them and we gave them the option. We did not tell them you are getting the vaccine because, again, if there was something in this vaccine that caused harm, I did not want to be responsible for forcing something upon them that in turn made them sick. So my one holdout was my third, who's a freshman in high school. But eventually he came to us a few weeks later and decided on his own, after thinking about it and researching it, that he wanted to get the vaccine. Now, my feeling is that was what our family chose to do. If there are people that are in here right now and people that are going to listen via the platform, and John, I don't know your situation, and quite frankly, it's none of my damn business. But if people choose not to get vaccinated, we live in a free country. That should be the right of every American citizen to decide what goes into your body. Now, this is not really an apples and apples comparison, but when you look at abortion, I mean, my body, my choice. And again, it's a different argument, so I don't want to compare it too much. But really, putting a shot in your body, it is your body, and it should be your choice without the government mandating to you that you need to take this. And, for me, John, I'm not a big fan of the mandates at all. I'm sure you and I probably feel pretty similarly about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to point out, too, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've been vaccinated. I have not gotten the booster yet. I went with the Moderna vaccine. I did my research. However, I totally am with you. I think that you should not force a mandate on anyone. The government should not be involved in our medical history. They should not enforce making you get a vaccine. Employers should not enforce making you get a vaccine, or you're going to lose your job. There are other ways, honestly. And I did the research, talk with my doctor. My doctor said this is probably, smart for you to do. And I went ahead and did it. Do I know people who have not? Yes, I do. My wife, my daughter both had COVID, and we had their antibodies tested. They have high antibody levels. These are the antibodies that they check for vaccines to see whether or not you have a strong immune response to possibly getting a different strain of COVID. How come we don't talk about natural immunity and the antibodies developed from people who have already had COVID and survived it? We're not talking about the T cells and the B cells and the things like that are components which many, many doctors believe are just as valuable and important as the immune response from the vaccine. So there's other ways of treating. When have you ever heard in history, John, that one particular medical way of doing things was a one fits all scenario? It just doesn't happen. Everybody's different.
No, you're right. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And to me, again, you and I, a little bit more senior than probably some of the people in here. In addition to COVID, I mean, along with what you're saying with COVID, I agree 100%. But I literally can't remember a time in this country where we are facing as many of the challenges as we are right now. I mean, I know a lot of people out there didn't like Trump, and personally, do I want to hang out with him and spend time with him? Not particularly, but I do think that there was a lot of good things that happened during his administration. And if you look at what's happened here in the last 11, to almost 12 months now, is we have literally seen many, many aspects of this country fall apart. I mean, we have seen inflation. We have seen, the bombing of Syria, cutting back on the Keystone Pipeline. We're seeing jobless rates like we've never seen. We have seen so many things happen. Gas prices are through the roof. And we're not hearing Joe Biden being blamed for anything. Now, if you remember way back in the very beginning of COVID, everything was Donald Trump's fault. The surges in COVID were Trump's fault. Even though he helped to develop a vaccine in a very short amount of time, he got no credit for that. And we have, in my opinion, a list of problems in this country right now that's getting longer by the day. And I don't know, John, I mean, what's your view on everything that's going on? Who's at fault? I mean, are there solutions to fix some of these problems that we have going on right now? I'd like to just kind of hear your overall feelings on the state of the country, and what we can do to maybe fix this.
Wow, those are
Big question. I know it is. I know it really is.
But let me tell you, I'll attempt to just give my thoughts about it. I believe that, like I said before, we're in perilous times. I believe that we have leadership in our nation right now in this current administration that, just for the sheer fact of hatred for Trump, wants to dismantle all of the things that he accomplished. And that's where you're seeing this huge fallout that's happening with, the shortages with the cargo problems and gas prices. And, no one ever seems to want to question Biden about him closing the pipeline, which has directly affected the price of fuel. They all talk about, it's not really gasoline yet, it's unrefined. Well, it eventually becomes the fuel that you place in the car, and it does increase the prices. That's why you're seeing gas, $1.30, $1.50 higher than it was during the Trump administration. Now, these are the things that begin to really affect the low information voters eventually. They start to get upset. Why am I spending 35, 40 bucks more every time I fill up my car? That's when they begin to question and get upset, when it personally affects them. I think there is a hypocrisy, of course, between the divisive nature of the way we have our parties. What was being screamed to impeach Trump over and over, and finally did it twice, and we're working on number 3. Where are the same cries for this lawless president who, frankly, I believe is ridden with dementia, and they're propping him up?
Let me interject for a second there. I have an 81-year-old father who has dementia. And Joe Biden is almost a carbon copy of what my father is right now. I have no doubt that he has dementia. So go ahead. I just wanted to interject that. You're 100%
no doubt.
Right.
And John, my mom, we put my mom in an Alzheimer's unit, assisted care living, because we saw her decline, and finally the doctor said to do it. And you are exactly right. And I have friends in the medical field. A lot of people made fun of Joe Biden and his stammering, his gait, the way he walks. Remember a couple of months ago, he was on CNN's town hall with Anderson Cooper, and he held out his arms, and people made funny memes, and they're funny. I'm not saying it's not humorous to mock some of this, but it's scary because these are all physical signs of dementia in the elderly. There's actually terminology for, it's called guarding, where Joe was holding out his hands in this defensive posture, rock'em sock'em robot style. And you'll see this in elderly folks with dementia and Alzheimer's trying to protect themselves, guard themselves, create a stance of protection from others.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad. To me, it's so obvious that he is suffering, and for whatever reason, they're putting him through this, and they're putting the American people through this right now. And I don't even really have any ill will against him, and I didn't expect to like him as a president, but I didn't expect we'd be in a position where we have this much of an ineffective administration. But what gets me today, still, though, people are so sold on him and the agenda and Build Back Better and all this stuff that's going on. I mean, it seems like that his core people just don't see what I see, which makes me wonder sometimes, am I so far on the right wing that I don't get it? I mean, am I an extremist? I think I sit back and think about that a lot because I imagine most extremists don't realize they're actually extremists, but I really don't think I am. I think I'm seeing the truth, and I imagine that you're on your podcast for the same reason, right? I mean, I feel like that the American people need to be awakened from what's going on right now because so many people are being led down this hallway that's going to lead to socialism, communism, and complete government control and dependency, on the government. And it scares me,
Absolutely. And I'll even take it a step further working in, I was a pastor, led worship in my church for 23 years, John. And so I kind of take it a little bit further and believe that there is an evil agenda in all of this, a purpose behind all of this to fundamentally change the United States, to make us a communist type of state, socialist, Marxist type of run country. But I believe that, when we removed God from things decades ago from our school system, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox and begin preaching.
Hold on. Let me be clear. I'd like you to get on this road because I want to hear you. So don't feel that you have to apologize. I'd like to hear what you think. I went to a Catholic high school. I'm a person of faith, so go get it.
Okay. All right. You asked for it.
Go ahead. I'd like to hear it.
No, I believe that when we removed God from the public school system, and then we have enabled the National Education Association or Administration, whatever they call themselves, the NEA, to control the curriculum that is taught to our children. That was one of the very first steps taken. When we devalue life, whether it be in the womb or with the elderly, to such an extent that it has caused this great chasm in society. We are literally a divided nation. And, I don't mean to talk about cliches, but united we stand, divided we fall. That isn't said just to be a clever little statement. There's truth in that. And if we want to get back to, and I'm not saying we have to be, the 1950s nuclear family, the ideal of Leave It to Beaver and the television shows that we all love to watch because they were simple and there was morality and there was always a lesson to be told in them. But we need to get back to some moral high ground. And if we don't, I'm afraid we're destined to be one of the many countries who have gone that same route and are no longer in existence today.
No, you're absolutely right. I think everything you said is right on the mark. And again, you have your faith. You were a pastor, which I think is phenomenal. And for me, I've never been a pastor, but I did go to a Catholic high school. I grew up in a family that was religious, and I've kind of swayed away from, I would say, organized religion a little bit, and that's predominantly because of some of the things I witnessed, and you all know about that. People that have been in my show before, I've talked about it. But for me, I am definitely a man of faith. I am definitely a man of goodness. I believe that we need to be exposed to more positive things. Now, I'm a guy that loves horror movies. I love, scary TV shows. I'm as guilty as anybody for watching that stuff. But I was talking to my wife about it the other night. We were watching something with my daughter. And I'm like, today you're hard pressed to find anything on television that isn't violent, that isn't, someone killing someone or, theorizing of how they're going to kill someone. I mean, every show is almost going back to that. And you mentioned Leave It to Beaver. Some of you probably don't know who that show is. That was a show that was more in the 50s, but I watched it in reruns when I was a little bit, when I was young. But there were shows like Little House on the Prairie. There were shows like Waltons. There were shows like The Brady Bunch. There were shows like The Partridge Family. There were a lot of wholesome family shows that I learned a lot of life lessons from when I was a kid, and they had very positive, inspiring messages. Even the old TV show Happy Days, the Fonz, that old show, most of the shows ended with like a moral where you learn something positive. And today it's about violence and death and killing and serial killers and murder. And I do think you're right. I think when you look at the whole grand scheme of things, I do think that removing God from schools, removing God from this, trying to dumb down Christmas, trying to, separate people from their holidays, even like Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. No one should be allowed to celebrate their individual holiday. It seems like that there's been a systematic approach by the powers of be to separate us from our belief systems and separate us from the goodness that comes from, worshiping God or worshiping a higher spirit or whatever you choose to worship. And you're right. I think we've seen the moral decay of American and world society over the last decade or so. And it's sad because
it's cold in southwestern Ohio today. But John is really right on. We have lost our way, and in an attempt to be tolerant with one another and politically correct, we have chosen a path to our own detriment. And we are literally so PC, we are so politically correct today that, I fear that we're not going to be able to just say anything about what we believe about anything anymore without offending someone.
Right.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
There you are.
You're back.
Hello, can anybody hear me? Okay, well, I guess I'm here.
We can hear you.
But I lost everybody else. So Mike, you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can. All right, weird. I don't know what's going on, but it looks like we lost John Gale. So John's no longer on the panel. So I guess you can hear me now, but we lost the person I'm interviewing. What is going on, Podbean? What is happening? John, if you could, try to call back in. Apparently, Podbean first dumped me, and then they dumped all of you. So hopefully we can get everybody in here. So where is everybody?
John, we can hear you.
Okay, I can't hear John at all. So if you guys can hear John, okay, he's calling back in. Hopefully this will resolve it. All right. John, are you there?
I am here. That is very weird because we were actually there and you couldn't hear us and you were talking and we were talking. That's bizarre.
Strange. Yeah, I mean, for me, now I have an echo in my ear, so I'm not sure if that'll go away. But yeah, for whatever reason, I didn't touch anything. I was speaking, and then all of a sudden you couldn't hear me. I don't know what happened, but it must be one of those Podbean glitches, I guess. Who knows what's going on? But go ahead. Why don't you continue on with what you were saying? And actually, to kind of refocus a little bit after our little technical issue there, I want to ask you a little bit about your career as a pastor. You mentioned that you were a pastor. How long were you a pastor for? Are you still a pastor? And what has that meant to your life? Oh, Mr. A, making fun of the boomers. That's mean, man. I see that in the chat down there.
Yeah, well, I grew up, like I said, Catholic, big Catholic family. My parents tried the rhythm method. They wound up with 6 of us. So that didn't work too well for them.
The rhythm method. I learned about that in my pre-Gana.
Yeah, if you don't know what the rhythm method is, you need to Google it because it is an ineffective form of birth control. Let's just say that. Regardless, so growing up Catholic, and my dad went through a very conversionary process in the middle 70s and really came to know Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior, not this religious figure. And the whole family kind of went this route. I was, 10, 11 years old at the time. And being a young kid, I just kind of, went along with it. Now I kind of had my own experience as I grew a little older into my teenage years because, frankly, I was a stupid kid that still felt like I could dabble and do things that I wanted to do on the side. And that was to my own detriment, but I ended up at a non-denominational church in town and got involved in like their choir, began singing. I guess you'd call me sort of the creative type. of guy and began doing songs and special songs and things like that. Well, then they asked me to like be their choir leader, and I did that. And then the church went through a little bit of a split. And the pastor started his own, one of the pastors in their church, and I ended up going with him and began leading worship there, and then was asked to be the associate pastor. So that's kind of the process, and was there for 23 years as the associate.
To hammer America about the
Nice. Yeah, you're losing your
genuine
connection a little bit there. I
insurgents.
think it might be your
Let's
cell
all
phone
take a
or
moment
however
to
you call it again.
reflect
The connection's
on
been a
the
little
summer
weak the last
peaceful
couple of
protests
things.
and
But no, I think it's
Democrats
great that
moment
you're a
that
pastor,
happened in
and I think we need
Minneapolis.
a
Take
lot
a
more of
look
that
at what they
in
did
the
to the
world
city of
today. I mean, it seems
Minneapolis.
like we've
The
definitely
liberal left
lost
and Black Lives Matter
our
burnt down that city.
moral
And
compass
again,
in
we
this
still
world, and
hear
that's been
nothing
kind of
about it, yet
unfortunate.
it's still
Let me ask you this
considered to
question, though,
be
John.
peaceful.
Did
We're
you?
hearing an audio of you, John, playing in the background on your end.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah, I'm hearing something in the background.
That is weird. I don't know what's going on here. All right. Okay, is it gone now?
Yep.
All right,
Sounds like it.
I think my phone started up. Man, we have all kinds of technical issues today. But anyway, so John, what did you think of Trump? Did you like Trump as president? Do you think he should run again, or should we be looking for another candidate in 2024?
I loved Trump. At first, when he first ran, I was a little concerned about it. He's a bit brash, but then I kind of went through the whole thinking process. We're not electing a pope. We're not electing a pastor. We're electing a leader who needs to be hard on a lot of issues. And I think he was exactly what the nation needed for the time that he was there. I uh, totally believe that he should run again. I am fully supportive of him. I would love to see, and I've said this before on my program, a Trump DeSantis ticket where he would run maybe as VP. I think that that would be a duo that would be unstoppable. But I totally support Trump. I know a lot of people, they have their issues about Trump. They think that he's a narcissist, and I don't know a leader of a nation who has not been a narcissist. I think that are some of the attributes of being just a natural born leader is somewhat narcissistic. So these are tributes that a leader has. I totally support Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as well. I know that he turned a lot of people off, but I think he did a lot of good things when he ran the country, and I do support him as well. Now, I see one of the biggest problems we have in this country right now is we are so divided as a country. You've got Democrat versus Republican. The liberals have done everything they could to kind of turn blacks and whites against each other, gay versus straight. I mean, we've got all these different divisions in this country right now. What can we do as, again, I'm a small little podcast. You're a small little podcast. Podbean is mostly people of small little podcasts. I mean, what can the small voices do, in your opinion, to improve this division that we have in this country right now? Because, I mean, I've never seen this country as divided as it is right now. And in order for us to get past a lot of this stuff, we need to unite. And I just don't know if it's a possibility. Do you see any path forward where our country can maybe unite back together a little bit more? Because right now we are so divided.
Wow. One thing that united us, unfortunately, was 9/11. And it only was, a brief period of time before that turned and we became very divided again. But for a brief period from September through probably the early part of the following year, it didn't matter whether you were Republican or Democrat or what color of skin you were. We were all Americans. And this tragic event shook us to the point of understanding that we need to be united. Sadly, I think unless there's another event like that, I don't see us being able to come together. What we can do as small little podcasts is just continue to speak the truth in love. I won't be belittled or silenced because of my beliefs. Just because I have certain conservative beliefs does not make me intolerant or a homophobe or a hateful person. And I believe that we need to continue to speak the truth, not be hateful or belittling to people sometimes. And, we all get on our soapboxes and get angry. And especially in the podcast, sometimes, we say things and we make fun of a particular person, and there's immediate backlash. Oh, you're just intolerant. You're this, you're that. Maybe we should get a little bit away from the name calling and just point out the error of things that we see around us.
I'll tell you, you're so right. I mean, last night I had that exchange with my friends, and when I got attacked a little bit, my first thought was, well, F him. I'm going to respond back and put him in his place. So I sat and thought about it for a second. I said, the only thing that's going to do is cause a rift, and that's going to make me look bad. So I tried to write back a very, coherent, respectful response back. And it was funny. I didn't get too many responses back on that. I think that was almost like a little bit of a mic drop moment where I said, listen, this is how I feel. Right. This is how I try to respect other people. And, I don't think there's any reason for any of us to insult each other. And I think that did kind of hit home a little bit as they were trying to obviously, because I know I'm friends with some liberal friends and I'm more of a conservative, obviously. And they were waiting for me to kind of lash back. And I didn't do that. Hey, look, Glenn's back. I feel honored to be blessed by his presence. Welcome back, Stinky Dad, to the show. Hopefully you're doing well. And hopefully everything's going well with you, my friend. Rights to free speech. I agree completely on that. So I don't know, man. I really enjoy talking to you. You have a lot to say about the country. You and I agree, I think, on a lot of different areas. But when you look at what's going on with the liberals right now, and you look at what's going on in this country, I mean, obviously we're seeing socialism. You are seeing an approach of communism. Are we looking at the Great Reset? Is this actually what this is? I mean, are we looking at a world that's trying to create like a one world government? Because you see a lot of unrest in a lot of different places. And I guess from my perspective, if you do feel that we're looking at like a Great Reset or something to that effect, what is the end game? Is the end game to have complete control? Is it to spread money out amongst different people? Because I'm a person that doesn't mind, the regular guy or the person that maybe has struggled his entire life having a chance to make some money in his life. I mean, I think that's a good thing. Everyone should have the right to go out and work and earn a good living for their family. But what do you think the end game is of the left in this whole thing that's going on right now?
Well, I think that they fundamentally want to change the way that we have run the country. The country is being run. And I think that, it is fundamentally evil. And I think that they will do whatever they can to bring that about. And what can we do about it other than point it out to others and the insanity of it, and hope that there's enough people with common sense left in the nation? And I really believe, John, that we are part of a silent majority. There's talk about the sleeping giant that will arise. And, every few years you see it happen on election day. Now, when you're cheating and not counting things properly and you're letting dead people vote, issues like that happening, how can we recover from that? I don't know, unless you have people really policing that, who have the ability to be able to really watch it without being left out and paper putting up on the windows, and you're not allowed to even watch them count votes anymore. I mean, if you're going to cheat, what can you do about it? But if we keep pointing these things out, I think that there's enough people with common sense, Americans who are not, on the fringe of the country in California or New York or Chicago, that will rise up, and that sleeping giant will finally have had enough.
I think you're right. I mean, I do believe that we are going to see not just a red wave in 2022, but more of like a red tsunami in 2022. And I think we're going to overtake Congress, which I hope we do sincerely, so we can hopefully ouster that vampire Nancy Pelosi. And there I go insulting people. I probably shouldn't do that. But if there's anybody in this country that I despise, it's Nancy Pelosi. I do not feel there's anything good about that woman. I believe she's the epitome of evil in this country right now. But with something you just talked about, I wanted to ask you this question anyway, so I'm glad you kind of went there before I asked you the question, because I have my feelings. Do you feel that there was cheating involved in the last election?
I think that there's proof of the cheating that went along. When you have states that take days and days and days to count, I remember turning to my wife and how come American Idol can count millions of votes in a 2-minute commercial break, but it takes Pennsylvania days and days to count, a few 100,000 votes. We've either got to figure out things how to properly count things better, or make sure that things are cut off at a certain time when you're allowing beyond the hours of the poll to stay open. You're doing all kinds of illegal things that have proven to have broken the law, and it's allowed to happen. There's such a double standard between the two parties that I simply don't understand it. And you talk about maybe the good nature of conservatives as opposed to the liberals. I don't like I said earlier about why aren't we trying to impeach this man who we have a laptop from his son right now, and I don't mean to go off the topic a little bit, but
go ahead.
There's written proof that not only does his son believe that his dad has dementia, but that he was on the take for 10% of proceeds from our adversary, China. This is treasonous material, and we don't have a Republican that has any backbone except for a handful, that will stand up and say, this man needs to be impeached. Now, what do? We've got then Kamala as the president, and maybe that's why they're not doing it. But there's got to be some backbone in our party, and it's missing.
I agree. The Democrats are not afraid to go after it with a scorched earth policy. And that's what they do. They don't care. They go after it. And you're right. I think a lot of times the right is too busy being civil at certain times in order to do what they need to do. So I agree completely on that whatsoever. And from my perspective, I do believe there was cheating. I mean, when you had all these states were shut down all at the same time from counting votes, when you had videos of people pulling out briefcases from underneath tables. I mean, I literally that night, I had to work the next day. I went to bed, looking at the vote count, thinking, all right, great, Trump won. It's over. There was no chance in heck that Biden was coming back from that deficit. And I woke up the next morning, I was like, what happened? And you looked at everything that happened. And then the thing that still gets me is I don't know how anyone in this country can believe that president, the bumbling fool, the child sniffer, Joe Biden, I don't know how anyone can believe that guy actually got the most votes in presidential history. He got more than Obama. He got more than Trump. He got more than any president in the history of this country. However, he can't get anyone to show up at a rally. When he goes into towns, no one shows up to greet his caravan, but we're supposed to believe that he got that many votes. I mean, maybe his voters are all sitting home, in their house in a chamber with 4 masks on, and they're afraid to go out in public. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. But I mean, for me, it just seems so cut and dry that there was cheating. And the perspective that I've made on a few of my shows is there were reports that people felt that Trump had cheated back when he won the election. The bottom line is, if we do not get to the bottom of cheating allegations, no matter who wins, what's the point of a democracy? I mean, if we have elections where we're cheating in every election and we're just basically placing someone as president, I mean, we're not living in a free country. We don't have a democracy. And if there was cheating again, with Trump, or if there's cheating with Biden, why was there so much resistance on the part of the left to even investigate the cheating allegation against Biden? I mean, for me, if I'm in Congress and there's a major allegation of cheating, I want to investigate this. I want to have a commission. I want to investigate cheating. And the left, who was in control of everything, put up one roadblock after another to prevent any type of audit of the election. So to me, that just shows that they knew there was cheating, and they were looking to basically not, let the genie out of the bottle, basically. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, and you're right on about Biden. He couldn't fill a gymnasium.
Right.
While Trump was filling, arenas and stadiums and turning thousands of his supporters away at rallies. You have Biden, who has 8 hula hoops to keep everybody safe from the virus, and only 3 of them have people in them at a rally. And this man won. It's completely preposterous. At least Obama had charisma and was able to remember his Grecian arena that he filled for his inauguration. He had supporters. And like you say, either they're the ones that are sitting in their cars with their masks and they're afraid to go out by themselves in their trucks. And that always freaks me out when I see somebody wearing a mask by themselves in their car.
Why? It's right. Why? You're alone. Take the mask off.
Hello. I guess you're protecting the upholstery. I don't know. But he was not a popular figure. You can look at the polling. I mean, his polling is abysmal. 70% disapproval ratings in some cases. This man is not a popular figure. He did not win the election. There's no possible way in my mind that I believe that he did.
Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, we're kind of running up on the hour. And I wanted to take a step away from politics for a second. And there's been something that's kind of ruminating around in my head a little bit since you mentioned it earlier in the show. You mentioned when you were younger, and I hope you don't mind me asking you personal stuff. Sometimes I do that. If you don't want to answer, just don't. But you mentioned you were a bit of an introvert when you were younger. Now, it's funny because I have a daughter that's an introvert. And it's funny, I just saw a term. There's a new term. Maybe it's not new. I'm just old. But there's a term for people who are like a combined extrovert and introvert. And I'm a sales guy. I do this podcast. And if you hear my voice, you probably think, oh my God, he must be out talking to everybody. I'm really not. I'm an extrovert in my job because I have to be. But honestly, in my private life, I am very much an introvert. I'm kind of a hermit. I spend a lot of time in my house. I work remotely. I don't go to parties. I'm not a super social guy. So I'm kind of wondering what it was like for you as an introvert. And do you still view yourself as being an introvert?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I am a major introvert. Frankly, I mean, if you ask my wife, she would say, you don't like people, do you? And frankly,
I don't. I agree.
I have difficulty with. And growing up, like you said, going back to childhood, yeah, I was that kid, never raised his hand. The teacher had to call upon me to get me to say anything all the way through high school. When I finally broke out of that was being behind a microphone in a room still by myself as a DJ for my high school radio station. And I could say whatever I wanted to say because I was still alone, but lots of people heard me. And that sort of began to break me out of that shell. But I still have those attributes. I still have to force myself to be social in a social setting. If you know me, I'm friendly. I'm the life of the party type of guy. But if I've never met you before, I pretty much clam up.
Yeah. I'm the same way. It's funny you mentioned the radio. I mean, that's what I initially liked about it. Like when I was a broadcasting major in college, you had to do various things. So you had to try out television, you had to try out radio. And I did like the anchor desk and things like that. I hated doing that. I hated it. I hated being on the camera. I hated having to worry about which way you were looking, how you looked, your facial expressions, all that stuff that comes along with it. When I did radio, and that's why I haven't embraced here as much video, because I know a lot of people do Twitch and they do video podcasts in addition to this. I actually love having it just be me and the microphone. You can't see me. I say what I want to say, and I can express myself without having to worry about, what I look like. Because let's face it, for those of you who have seen me, it's kind of a scary prospect at first, when you have to kind of get used to my looks, kind of like, I don't know, one of the, like Jason, when he takes his mask off in Friday the 13th, maybe. But, for me, I just love the anonymity of radio. To me, it's just kind of mystical in a way,
Absolutely. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, being a creative type of guy, I love to sing and stuff, and I'll make, my parodies and videos and post them online and love for people to respond to them. But doing it live might be a little different,
Exactly. Now, I have to address Doss's comment down there. Now, he said to me, you hated the camera because it added 15 pounds and you're already a fat F. Now, I know that some of you happen to see my Instagram post where I was recently on Dexter. And of course, unfortunately, I was in that before I lost the 53 pounds that I've now lost. And I will admit, I saw it and I'm like, damn it, why couldn't I have been in that and gotten a close up after my diet instead of before my diet? Because I definitely was. But I've now lost 53 pounds and I'm feeling great. Yeah, blood pressure's down.
Look at Crazy Lady's comment.
What'd you say? I love you, John. Uncle Fester, you would make an awesome Uncle Fester. You know what? You're not wrong. My daughter tells me, because my kids do plays, or my oldest two did plays quite a bit. And they keep saying to me, if they happen to do Shrek the musical, I have to try out for Shrek. And I got to say, I look in the mirror. If you paint me green, I guess I am Shrek. So I can't argue with that either. Oh, man. So, John, you got anything else you want to say? We're coming up on an hour. I usually try to keep them about an hour for downloading purposes. I mean, I guess if you want to maybe leave a message about some of the things you're feeling right now, or if there are people in here or people that listen to my downloads that haven't heard your show, why should they tune into the John Gale program?
Yeah, well, I kind of have taken a sort of a little bit of a theme with the program, calling it a new era of conservative talk. And you were talking about Podbean being that form technologically. That's something that really excited me too. I was the same kind of person. I thought podcasts were something that you downloaded and listened to to in the car when you were driving to and from work and caught up on some crime story or something like that. I didn't realize that they could be live. So when the forum came open, I was like, "Holy cow! This is radio, a new generation of radio."
Right? I can do radio, exactly.
Right, like a new way, and with the ability, no longer are crackly little AM stations listening to people on their phones, but you can talk through your $800 smartphone and pretty decent most of the time, except for a few little glitches like we've experienced today.
Yeah.
But I would just encourage people to, give it a listen. I try to talk about how I believe and feel about things from a conservative perspective, but also a humorous one. And we have our moments of funny things, and we talk about sort of everyday funny stuff, and do some trivia and do some musical parodies and things like that. So there's a little bit different of an element. You're not going to hear Ben Shapiro, when you listen to my show. But I would just encourage people who maybe feel like conservatism is humorless to give me a listen. We're on at 5 p.m. right now, weekdays, on Podbean Live. And really the best place to find out about the program is going to my website, which I maintain myself, so I might not always get to it on a daily basis, but pretty much everything's up to date there, and all the links are available there, and you can read about my bio and check out my blog and some of the funny videos and things that I post there. And that's the johngaleprogram.com. And Gale is spelled Gale, like a big wind.
Look at you technical wizard. Now, for all you people out there that judge John and I with our technology experience, now try to understand that I did not own a computer until I was 28 years old, okay? They didn't exist. I was thrilled in college when I got to go from using an actual typewriter to using a word processor, because then you wouldn't have to worry about correcting errors. Now, to give you guys an idea of the anxiety that my generation and John's generation dealt with. When I was in college, you would have to type out your reports. So if I wrote like a 15-page report and I was typing it out, if you got down to the bottom of a page and you made a typing error, you could not use whiteout, you could not correct it, you had to retype the page. And I was not a good typer, so it took me a while to get down to the bottom. So when you got down to that final line of typing a page, it was literally like one finger per letter saying, please don't hit the wrong key, please don't hit the wrong key, or you'd literally have to crumple it up and start over again. There were times where I would throw fits in college because I got down to like the last few words and I made a mistake, and you would literally lose points for having typos on your paper. So you guys out there, you young people, are spoiled with all the technology you've been given, but I love you anyway. So please bear with us as we have like boomer issues with our podcast sometimes. We're doing the best we can. And I think it's pretty remarkable that we're able to actually get on and do podcasts and manage websites and do all this stuff that is so, I think, natural for the younger generation,
My dad's first computer was a Radio Shack TRS-80, and it had the big 5-inch floppy drives and a dot matrix printer with a modem that made sounds like you were killing your cat when you tried to connect to AOL. Remember that?
Remember that noise? That's one noise the young generation doesn't get. That old connection to AOL, that horrible screeching noise that you had to do every time you got online. So, hey, Eric, with you here, I wanted to ask you, do you have any questions for John, buddy? I wanted to see if you had anything you wanted to ask him.
Well, no questions I could really think of, but I know that we're having like a great discussion nonetheless, and I know that the election fraud from last year, I know that's been like a recurring topic on this show and on Slightly Serious, and when Jeremy was doing Cummings' Culture and a couple other shows, including The Gray Area. Because one thing we're transparent about, regardless, like with last year, like whether the fraud happened at the ballot box or whether it was like big tech, and their influences and their stifling of free speech, we just know for certain things we're just not on the up and up.
I agree with you 100%. And I don't know if you saw the question. Elgato had a question, and we did talk about this a little bit earlier because I did ask the question, do we feel Trump is the best choice moving forward? But Gatto's question is, I'll let you handle this, John. Why does everyone put their eggs in the Donald Trump basket?
That's a good question. I think that, you have to have not only someone who has the ability to lead, but somebody with some charisma. I think Mike Pence is a natural born leader. He is an incredible man, smart, brilliant man. But frankly, he is boring as all get out to me. And I've heard that he may actually make a run himself. I think that if you don't put your eggs in one basket, to answer his question, we would be so fractured that there was no way that we could possibly win. We have to either be all in, and like you said earlier about the Democrats, man, they're out to go get it no matter what. And they all rally and do one thing singularly. Unfortunately, conservatives, Republicans, libertarians, we think, oh, this person, that person, this person. And in the process, we are so fractured, we can't get enough votes. So I think it's dangerous. I think you have to get behind one person eventually.
You do. I think part of it is too. I don't know if there's been a viable person yet that we've heard. And we've heard about DeSantis, and I don't dislike DeSantis. There are a lot of people out there I like. I can tell you one person that I will never support. And tell me if I'm wrong here, John. I see Mike Pence pop up on Twitter. I see Mike Pence pop up in different places. And I actually did like him as a vice president. Do you feel that he actually did sell Trump out? Because when I see his name pop up, I get angry. And my first thought is, I'll never vote for that guy. Am I wrong thinking that? Would Pence be a viable choice, or is he just part of the swamp?
I think he'd be a viable choice. I think he's smart and knows what he's doing. I think he'd be a great leader. I just don't think he has the charisma. Do I think that he sold Trump out? I think that he was advised to do what he did for whatever purposes those purposes may be. And there's smarter people about that could talk to that. But I think that I don't think he sold him out. I think he did what he felt was the proper thing to do. I know with Trump, he tends to probably cut somebody off if they come up against him. I think that that's what happened, although I also believe and have heard stories that they've made amends and are cordial to one another.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think everyone has disagreements in their life, and that's one thing I've always tried to do. And for those of you out there, I've said this to you on many of my shows. If you've had a disagreement with somebody, if you carry along hate and you carry along contempt in your life, then basically you're going to find out that over the course of time, it's going to be hurting you as much as it is the other person. You can't carry on contempt for other people. And I'm glad to hear that maybe they've made amends and moved forward. I mean, I do think that Trump probably will be the person moving forward. But now, John, do you have any questions or concerns about his age? I mean, we're showing, obviously, right now we have an issue with Joe Biden's age, where he's most likely to get dementia. Will Trump be too old in 2024? Because he's going to be, 77, 78, somewhere around there, about the same age Biden is,
Yeah. No, I think we definitely, there's issues with age. I'm more concerned, of course, about Biden believing that he could run again. Because he would be 82 when he starts or something like that by the end of it. I mean, really old. So I think that, there's wisdom, obviously. We're talking about that earlier. We are the seasoned citizens, not senior citizens. And, there's wisdom, of course, in age. But, you got to be healthy. You got to be, and I think there should be, a cognitive test, frankly, for any leader. They should give Joe Biden and Trump the clock test to see if he can pass it.
No, I agree completely. And that's one thing, for all of you in here, you might sometimes hear, maybe me or people like John give advice. And we're not giving advice because we think we're any smarter than anybody else. Trust me, if you were able to look at my high school and college transcripts, you'd know that's not the case. But I mean, you do with age, you do get some wisdom. And basically, I think sometimes some of the things we can share with all of you are some of the stupid decisions we've made, the mountain of mistakes that we've made during the course of our lives. And I try to, share that with my kids sometimes. And I do, sometimes they get frustrated because they don't want to hear from dad all the time. But I try to sit and just tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to tell you that I'm smarter than you. I'm just, trying to prevent you from making the same stupid mistakes that I've made. Like the one analogy I use with my son is, I'm like, listen, because he gets mad at me sometimes. I'll be like, listen, let me ask you a question. You are now 15 years old. If you were sitting in the kitchen and there was a 5-year-old kid in the kitchen with you and the stove was on and he reached up to put his hand on the stove, what would you tell him? He'd say, well, I'd tell him not to get burned. You're going to hurt yourself. And I'm like, see, but you understand that if he touches the stove, he's going to burn his hand. At his age, he doesn't understand that. So when I give you advice, I am basically in essence telling you, don't touch the stove because you haven't experienced this in your life yet. And I have, and I'm trying to prevent you from hurting yourself. And I think sometimes when I've used that analogy with my son, it's kind of helped him to understand a little bit. I mean, I think it annoys him sometimes when I prove that I'm right in certain cases, but I think that he does in general understand that I'm trying at least to have his best intentions at heart. And if there are any people in there that have like young kids right now, enjoy the time when they're young. I've got 4 teenagers in my house right now, and they're wonderful. I love my kids. They're great kids. But all that work you're doing with babies and toddlers, basically you're working your way up the minor league system into the major leagues. And by the time your kids become teenagers, at that point you are promoted into the major leagues of parenting because it's a whole new ball game when you have older kids with more complex issues and things like that. So enjoy your babies when they're little because as they get older, they're still amazing to watch, but it gets more complicated. I know you're about the same point in your career with your kids. Have you found the same thing to be true where once they become teenagers, I mean, it's amazing to watch their growth, but it's also hard in some ways also.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to sort of let go a little bit as they get older. The pastor in me recalls a scripture that kind of goes along with, and that's train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart. And that basically means, you train up the kid in the younger years and, they might step back and go their own route for a little while, and that's okay. But hopefully you've instilled some values and morals in them at a young age that when they're older, they'll cling to those things.
Wow. Do you see that comment from Big Chief Thunderlung? He has 6 kids left at home out of 13. God bless you. That is amazing. Wow. That is amazing. My grandmother on my father's side had, I think, 15 kids in her family. We do have a picture of all of them together from back way in the day, but that is amazing. 13 kids. Boy, I'm in the minor leagues compared to you, brother. That's amazing. I couldn't even imagine. 4 has been enough for us to handle. I love them, but it's a lot of work. So that's crazy. So, well, listen, 10 girls and 3 boys. God bless you. We've got 1 girl, and that's been hard enough with the drama and all the things with friends and all that stuff that have gone on. But, Crazy Lady, that's a good point, too. Letting you, if Crazy Lady, it's funny. I keep meaning to end the show, and I see comments that make me want to continue on. I literally was thinking about that last night where I was sitting down, thinking about my family, thinking about I've got to make sure I'm being good about treating them like adults and giving them the respect of being adults because that's where they're at now. And if I don't do that, they're going to be resentful. So it's funny. I just literally had that thought last night. So Chels, you have 4 girls and 1 boy, man, we get a lot of people with big families. I love it. I love that we have so many family oriented people in here because that's
Tuttles has 7 kids in his house.
Does he really? Unbelievable.
Troncat has 6.
Troncat does too. That's crazy. So when I talk about 4 kids, I'm kind of like a novice in here compared to some of these parents in here. That's absolutely amazing. But you're right, Crazy Lady. You've got to let them live their life. I did get one bit of advice that was helpful for me when I was a young parent. I had a guy that said to me that the best thing you can do, a lot of your kids are going to be hardwired with their personalities. You kind of have to guide them on the right path. You can't force them into things they don't really have a talent for or things that they don't want to do, but you try to guide them and support them and kind of be, for lack of a better stupid cliche, the wind beneath their wings. But, it's one of those things where parenting's an amazing journey. It really is. Hey, Bar Ram U podcast, one of my favorite brothers from Scotland. Good to see you, my man. And I'm telling you, I'm committed that I'm going to go to Scotland and I'm going to meet Bar Ram U podcast in Scotland, and we're going to hang out, because I did find out through ancestry.com that I think I'm like, I don't even know, like maybe like Liz Warren, 1/1,000,000th Scottish, but I am definitely going to get there and see my homeland, maybe if it's only a little bit. So thanks for saying that, Barbara. I appreciate it. All right, hey, listen, everybody, I'm going to probably start to wrap this up. It has been an absolute pleasure to have an interview with John Gale today. I've heard a lot of good things about him, and after hearing him talk, I can see that you all, have a show that if you haven't been in, you need to get in and listen to him, because it's a great show. He's on every day at 5:00 Eastern time. I think that is right, John?
That's correct. And John, let me say, if I don't get another chance, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to come on. I've enjoyed talking with you. It's been an honor to be with you today.
Well, I feel the same way. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And it's too bad we didn't live a little bit closer to each other. I could see you and I could be maybe introvert friends. Maybe we could just do that through Podbean. be introvert friends that way. Oh, rounding third. Good to see you also, brother. I'm just about to, Big Chief London. Oh, actually, I was in your show, Big Chief London, Thunderlong. I did see that. So, now, Big Chief, did you actually? I saw you mention the thing about aliens. Do you want to come onto my show and talk about that? I don't know if you've seen. I've done a couple of shows where I am kind of into that type of thing. So, if you ever want to come on and be interviewed on my show, Big Chief, I'd love to have you on to talk about that. So, send me a message on Twitter, Instagram, or reach out to Eric Kirk and let me know. I'd love to have you on. So, Eric, why don't you, if you could, do your promotion of the different shows coming up, and then we'll kind of put a bow on this big boy and wrap it up.
Right. Coming up on Podbean Live, be on lookout for Michael Key to do the new Real Conservative Talk podcast, should he go live sometime today.
I enjoyed Michael the other day. He was very good.
And then we know John Gale is coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern. And I know, like, primetime tonight, I know, like, Spanky and Scooter are not on 5 nights a week like they used to, but you could catch them Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time with the Beans and Weenie show. And then if Slightly Serious is going to do an impromptu show later, hopefully he'll keep us posted, and and we'll know more later. And then we know the Old Man's podcast will be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Then hopefully Ralph and the Gray Area and a couple other friends are planning on doing live shows later. And then Frankie D is back tomorrow afternoon. And you've also got This Swap Doesn't Lie with Felix on Friday. And then the dude Sean, High History, and then Crazy Train and Coltrane doing shows over the weekend. Jester doing the It's Doomsday podcast Sunday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then the Podfather show Friday night around 10 or 11 p.m. Eastern. And then Solid Blue Sister, she's usually on around 4 p.m. Eastern time. And trying to think up a few other shows. Slacker 82 Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. And of course, happy birthdays this week, of course, to Laura and to Crazy Kane if they're listening to this on download. And then, of course, tomorrow's Mike Tampa Bay's birthday, and Sunday is Shell's and J-Lo's birthdays, and J-Lo, the Podbean friend. And I know John DeVito's birthday is January 2nd, but in the meantime, John is hoping to also plan some more of these get to know your podcaster interviews and conversations. Hopefully, we might get Spanky and Scooter, as well as get To a Patriot Mama and Shannon coming on to tell her story, and then Felix, and hopefully Ralph, Roxanne, and Cracks, and a couple other old friends might decide they want to join us, and new friends like Will from the Art of Floundering podcast, and just so many names worth hopefully having on.
Hey, let me interrupt for a second, Eric. I have been corresponding also with a guy that runs the Wicked Awesome podcast. Now I'm looking at his Twitter.
Oh, Matt.
I didn't realize he was from Maine. He's a Maine guy, Belfast, Maine. That's cool as hell. I didn't even know that when I was communicating with him. I think I'm going to interview him on Saturday afternoon at some point, maybe around 3. I'm not sure yet. We're still working out the time. But he, as he called himself, this was really funny. This is not me saying this. He said, I would love to come on your show if you don't mind having a quote unquote liberal pansy on your show. So I responded back and I said, well, I am welcome to having anybody on my show. And if we have differences, that's okay. We can, speak respectfully to each other and have a conversation. So that actually might be kind of a fun show if he and I have like a difference of opinion on things, but didn't realize that he was a maniac. That's awesome. Belfast is up there too. That's up in northern Maine. So anyway, everybody, hey, listen, for everybody that's out there, I see I've got 14 people in here right now.
Real Pet Your Voice on Rumble and Twitch this evening.
Make sure you check out John Gale. Make sure you check out the John Gale program every day at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Enjoy the show. He's a great guy. He was a pastor. You know, if you're a person that follows God and you're spiritual, he's a guy you definitely should tune in into and listen to him a little bit. And of course, come back to my show. I appreciate all of you that keep coming in. I love my people, and you're all good friends, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you very much. And I'm going to wrap it up. So John, again, thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it, brother.
My pleasure, my friend. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Love you and God bless you, everybody. And
going with the rock on the way out this time. And I'll let you all think I did that on purpose. And I didn't push the wrong button. We'll stick with it, though. I know you all like the baby laugh.